Hey, so let's carry on. What I'm thinking is let's take a little look at some basic CSS because you're still going to need to know that. So here's Dreamweaver. And this is the folder. You see this lessons right here uh, that we see here as the local site folder, right? Because we said this is the folder. Now, there's no images in there right now, so I'm going to grab this little folder called Pictures, and I'm going to dump it inside of the lessons folder up here, which is the local site folder. And alakazam, there it is, right? So there's a bunch of pictures in there. Just random odds and ends. Now here's the two files we made before. Here's index, and here's links. Now, basic CSS. Well, the really early kinds that we talked about essentially were redefining tags and what are called classes. So by now, I really hope that everybody has a strong sense of what a tag is. I mean, to kind of hit it again, this is a tag, H1, and this is a tag, P for paragraph. And believe it or not, this is a tag. That's the tag for linking, right? So any of those things, for example, could be redefined. This meaning they could look different, appear different, behave differently. And of course there's another really important one, which is this guy right here, which is body, which basically runs from the very top all the way down to the bottom. It's essentially the most far-ranging one that we could redefine. Now, I won't start with it, but let's redefine a tag. So, you remember this guy, new CSS rule. And we always have a list up here. And one of the classic places that people goof up is that they don't bother to stop and pick what they're looking for. So you remember that IDs and compounds are about the sort of layout divs that we've been working with, and classes are kind of a special little style you can just sort of paint onto an area, and tags are the sort of structural underpinnings of how the HTML works. So it's a tag I'm trying to change, and I'll start with a very simple one, right? We'll go to H1. And although I'm not going to be a stickler for it on the final exam and such, I just want you to remember that it's a meaningful choice whether the styles are identified here in this document or in a separate style sheet. Because in a separate style sheet, they can easily be hooked up to a variety of documents wherever you like. So what this is asking me for right now is to give it a name. So I'll just call it something like styles. Yeah, that's it. And save. And really this just is how fancy do you want your H1 to be. I mean, there's a little subtle change there. I said your trebuchet. Let's see what else. We could make it considerably bigger. Let's go 36 pixel. It didn't do much, did it? We could make it I don't want to do that. We could make it sort of a bright orange kind of color, right? So any of those things we feel like doing to it are just great. We can do other weird stuff. We can put a border underneath it, right? So border, take off same for all, bottom, solid, thin. I'll do sort of a charcoal, right? So there we go. So that's the style for heading 1. Now, the idea, of course, is if you're doing a linked style sheet, and now here's our style sheet, right, styles.css, that I can just walk over to this guy and say, you know, you should be using that style sheet too. So here we go. Attach style sheet. Browse. Styles. OK. OK. And there it is. So the reason that you should recognize this is that redefined tags mean that the tags that are there already, or that appear in the document as we build it, they just take on whatever definition we've made. Now, let's contrast that with something different. I'll go to New CSS Rule. This time I'll do a class. And just remember, that is radically different. So here's a class. We'll call it something like Notice Me. All right. So in other words, we're trying to make some sort of eye-catching style in here. So, okay, Notice Me. Now, it's going to the same style sheet. Okay. All right, so we'll make it kind of big. I'll make it also 36. We'll make it red. Do you know what? Let's go bigger than 36. Let's go to like 50. For the font family, we'll say something heavy, like Arial Black, which is a pretty heavy-handed font. Now, the thing is, I really can't just hit apply and see it anywhere. Where would it appear? Where exactly would it appear? So, okay. And then the whole deal is we just pick something, anything, right? And down here on properties, I'm down at the bottom in case you missed it, there's a thing called class, right? Notice Me. There it is. So there is no Notice Me tag, but there's a class called Notice Me, and I can slap it onto this document anywhere I want to. However, there's a tag called H1, and if we redefine it, wherever it appears, the redefinition appears. Is this starting to make sense? Let's do one more. Let's do body, because God knows it's important. So I'll say New CSS Rule. It's a redefined tag, and it's the body tag. Body tag is a lot bigger than the paragraph tag. Paragraph breaks, by the way, too, so be a little cautious about how much you use that. Okay, and Arial. So we put Arial in as the font. That's exciting. We can also go like to box, and we could say put a margin of like 50 pixels in every direction to bring it all in a little bit. Right? See? Little layout. And I could even do something like put up a background image. Now, I think the background image I've got may clash a little bit with my color for H1, but let's see. I'm just throwing stuff together. So browse, pictures, and I'm thinking this thing. Yeah, definitely lose a little of the clean, bright, readable thing. And it's probably time to tune up my H1. So look, here's my styles. And if you're ever in Dreamweaver and you don't see them, just remember there's a big difference between what you see with current turned on and all. So here they are, all of them. Here's H1. Maybe it's time for H1 to not argue with that background color. So we'll say maybe white. There it is. Okay. And on both of these pages, there it is. All right, that's it for this one. More coming up pretty soon.